right. So, could you please introduce yourself first so I know who's who?
Okay, my name is Aiman.
My name is QALISH.
QALISH?
Yes.
Ah, nice to meet you both. So, Adam,
Yes.
I know your mom, Amy, and
Yeah.
I used to go to Bristol together for
Yes, she
the
told me about
graduate
you.
program.
Yes.
You lived there for 4 years.
That's true. Yes.
Do you still remember the time when you were in Bristol?
Yes, I still remember the times when I was there. I was when I went there, I was 12 until I was 16 years old.
Ah, hold on. Let me just quickly answer this phone because it's from a professor, okay?
Okay, okay.
広井先生、すみません。今、ちょっとズームミーティング中なので、終わったら電話差し上げます。すいません。ですね、一応これからインタビューということになってまして、1時間ほどでは終わります。
見てください。
はい、すいません。失礼します。Okay. Ready.
Okay.
So, I know you guys are college student studying intercultural communication?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. What made you guys decide to study intercultural communication then?
We decided to study this subject because it can help us explore more individuals around the world, like you miss. It can help us to get more experience in terms of language around all the world.
And Malaysia is such an international country to begin with. With all this knowledge, what kind of work would you like to do in your future? Have you ever thought about it?
Kind of.
Yeah, so?
It's very international because there's a lot of expatriates doing business here and a lot of international students. Around here in Siskanda, we got UTP, a very well-known private tech college.
Oh, so tech college as well, yeah?
So we can meet like a lot of students from the Middle East and in Africa also.
Fascinating. So you guys have a bright future.
Yes.
Nice. So I hope you got a permission from your supervisor to interview me today.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we start, can you briefly introduce yourself? Briefly introduce yourself. You can show it to our lecturer.
Introduce myself?
Yes. Briefly.
Briefly. So I am a friend of Amy. I got my doctoral degree from University of Bristol in 2018. So I am PhD in applied linguistics. So I do teach mostly English language education to undergrads. And also I am specialized in language assessment. And I do my research using eye tracking device. So I ask my participants to wear goggles like those eyeglasses to trace their eye movement while they are taking exam and see how well students with the high language proficiency perform versus lower students. It's fascinating. And right now I work in Nagasaki University in Japan, which is one of the local national university located in Nagasaki, which is far south on island. So it's a great pleasure to do this service for you. So interview questions I copied and pasted and shared in the chat.
Okay.
So what's the final product after you interview me and a couple other presumably professors?
Only you.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
And you're gonna write a report based on
Yeah.
me?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be tough because I could be quite biased sample.
I think we can manage. Yeah. I think,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Okay, before we start,
Hmm.
the reason, the question that we're going to ask is about how you deal with intercultural communication conflicts due to verbal and non-verbal communication conflicts.
Non-verbal and verbal communication barriers. How do I overcome? So in fact, I teach a chain lecture for undergraduate students. And one of the topic I teach is cross-cultural communication. And part of which I teach mostly Japanese students how important it is to be aware between verbal and non-verbal communications. And basically at that time, I show them iceberg floating on the oceans, because what you see on the tip of the iceberg is actually what you see as a communication gap, right? People use like body gestures, maybe some of the communication gap can be seen physically and it's easy to notice, but what's underneath under ocean is nonverbal communication cues that people sometimes misunderstand each other, right? So, for example, I sometimes talk about the time difference. So you came on time to meet this online meeting, but if I ask some students to have a party organized, and some of the European countries, if the start time is set at 7 o'clock, they don't show up at 7 o'clock for joining the party. It's sometimes rude to be on time. And they would think that showing up maybe 8 o'clock would be more appropriate, giving extra time for the host, right? Whereas in Japan, they're very, very punctual. And sometimes being late is taboo, and you have to show up like maybe 5 or 10 minutes prior to the meeting, and that's showing a kind of respect, and it's part of the communication. So time and also space, body gestures, all of these things are part of the cross-cultural communication, yet it's nonverbal and often mislead miscommunications. And unless you know about their cultural, like history or cultures, you don't know what to expect. So what I tell students is do not always expect, like those rules based on your own culture. Get to know them first, and you can build the communication, like you can avoid miscommunication basically. So it's not easy to understand people from other culture. Don't stereotype them, get to know them first.
Okay, I see. Okay, for
Yep.
the first question, I would like to ask, when speaking with non-Japanese people, how often do you face language barriers?
Okay, so speaking with the non-Japanese people in Japan, is kind of rare unless you live in a city where you have many tourists from overseas. I used to live in Kyoto because I worked for Kyoto University, and Kyoto, as you know, is an old capital and draws many tourists from overseas. But there are many signs out there in English, Chinese, Koreans, and I don't know, I can't read many other languages, but there are posts. So usually it takes care of themselves. And right now I'm in Nagasaki, which has a very famous port in Japan. So Japan used to be closed for all the international trades and relationship during the Edo period for a long time. And Nagasaki was the only port open to international trade. So they had a relationship with the Portuguese and Dutch at that time. And this was the only port. So we still attracted many tourists coming by very nice cruising ship in Nagasaki. And we do have many attraction like Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum and some other attracting spots. So there are many tourists, and we do have signs and posts in English, Chinese, some other languages. And when I see them, they sometimes ask me for which way to go, which train to take, tram to take to different destinations. And usually they come and ask me in English. So I tell them in English, oh, you can take this train and that. And usually those tourists do understand. And some of the cafe, they speak different languages to deal with the international customers. So I think the barrier would be minimum when it comes to tourists. But that kind of ties into your second question, though, because you did ask, since I'm teaching in educational field, in social science, do I have any barriers talking to my students? So my students are mostly from Asia. Majority of them happen to be Chinese. Students from Malaysia, they're an excellent students and they speak English. And they're one of the top students. I don't have any issues with them, but some of the Asian students, like especially from China, they have a very thick accent. And so they are either better in Japanese. In that case, I switch my language code in Japanese and I can communicate. But if their Japanese suck and if their English suck, then I don't know how to communicate, right? Compared to European students, though, like I have some students from Ukraine and some students from like in Europe, they speak multiple languages already. So even though their English are second language, they still manage to speak fine in academics, right? But some Asian students, unfortunately, if they're not good at Japanese, they suffer quite a bit. They do read textbook okay, but if they're asked to join the discussion and share their thoughts in English in class, sometimes it's hard to understand. So what they do is they use the body gestures and try to write some words on a whiteboard, try to explain themselves, and that's fine. So academics, if their English is poor, they tend to suffer more than those tourists, because tourists, we can use body language, we can show the map and they can get by. But if they're doing their academic studies, and especially if they're not just an exchange student, if they are trying to seek for a degree, they must have a certain language proficiency. Otherwise, their barriers might hurt academically.
Okay, I see and understand. Yeah.
My turn to ask. My turn to ask.
I let Kalish take over.
Okay, my question is, how do the Japanese cultural emphasis on politeness and formality impact your communication with people from different cultures?
So I know it's kind of a stereotype, but people tend to be quite impressed how Japanese people line up in a longer queue waiting for the train to come, and they think Japanese people being very, very polite, but that's just part of our daily life. So we don't think we are overly too polite or we are this or that. But since this is the kind of a stereotype people view us as Japanese, I become more conscious when I go overseas. So I tend to overact as a Japanese when I go overseas, try to be polite. So, you know, when I see some people in, like, say, in England, you know, I tend to do this and bow a little more than usual to give better impression of Japanese, because that's how they probably think Japanese are. But I'm not that conscious when I'm in Japan. And I think that if that's how people view as part of a Japanese culture, and it's a good culture, we try to keep that heritage and be more polite, especially when we meet foreign people. So it does give us quite a big impact, I guess.
Wait, wait,
What's
what's the word?
what's the word?
What's the word for it? How do I say it? You said apa tadi?
Said
Yeah. Can you please repeat again can you please repeat your answer again?
the which part?
The one that you said about this one.
The the part where you went to England and
Oh,
Right.
Describe a little more about how I
Yeah.
use those gestures.
Describe a little bit more about this one.
yeah.
So, for example, in England or in English-speaking countries, usually people say more thank you to show their appreciation. Maybe England, they say sorry a little more, but certainly in the US, people say when they give you a compliment, for example, oh, you dress nicely, you just simply say thank you, right? Or, you know, when you ask a favor and then they ask, yes, I can do that, you go thank. But in Japan, you actually say sorry or, oh, I'm sorry, but it means thank you.
Oh,
Right?
yes, I
So
understand.
you are being really super grateful and you're just saying thank you for showing, you know, for complimenting me, but somehow you say sorry. And this means, well, thank you and sorry at the same time.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Nishawa. For the next question, there's a common stance. There's a common stance that as the Japanese people being shy or quiet. What is your view or opinion on the matter? That's true.
So you are talking to the wrong person, because I don't fit into that category. I've never been shy and I'm quite direct, right? And quiet. I speak all the time and people don't think I am quiet. So, but in general, Japanese students are stereotyped being very shy and quiet because in class, they are told that they have to quietly sit and listen to the lectures. So when I give a lectures and there are a couple international students sitting here and there, if they come up with some opinions and questions, they self-invite by raising their hand and start talking and joining my conversation with my lecture. My Japanese students are probably thinking, oh my gosh, that's kind of a rude. You are intervening with the lecture, the professor talking, right? But I don't think it's an offense or anything. It's like them showing that they understand my lecture and joining us our conversation. But Japanese students are raised from grade 1, from even kindergarten, that they have to sit and listen. So it's not being shy. I think they are taught that way. They have to take a notes and listen. And if they ever come up with their opinions or questions, it's only after the class during the break when they go, oh, hi, professors. And I thought about this and maybe this is how I think, but never speak in front of other students, right? But I don't think they're shy. They are probably thinking in their head, but because they're told that they have to behave that way, they have to act being shy.
But
I guess.
do you think most Japanese people are being shy or quiet? Do you think
Like
majority of them?
the general
Uh,
Japanese.
I don't think they think they're shy, but the way they are behaving are seen as being shy because they're quiet. And I guess it's part of being polite, being polite. So personality-wise, I don't think they're shy. If you ask them to go out to karaoke, maybe you will see their true personality, right? So I don't think they're shy, but they are behaving as their behaviors or being quiet is seen as shy. So I don't think they're shy.
Okay, I see. Understood. Okay, Kalish, last question, please.
Okay, the next question,
Last question.
the last question. Does your non-Japanese students pick up the Japanese language during their time studying with you?
Okay, so I have one graduate student from Ukraine, and she joined the master program with no prior Japanese education language because she fled from the country. And so it's been almost a year since she joined my zemi or seminar. And she now is quite competent in Japanese. That's because she's not only taking Japanese language courses, but also she talks to other students in Japanese, right? So she's quite good. So sometimes I try to coin some phrases within English language sentence so she become more familiar with the terminology. And that kind of helps. She often come up with certain questions and ask me, so how do you say this? Or I heard something unfamiliar in this situation. How should I translate? So students pick up Japanese quite fast once they start living in Japan.
So is she very fluent in Japanese?
Yeah, I mean, she can go shopping on her own. Of course, she used devices to sort of scan and make sure she understands correctly. But when she first came, she was very fearful of going to visit physicians when she catch a cold because she didn't know how to explain, running nose or having a headache and things like that. Now she can explain about her basic symptoms and it's okay. So she doesn't need any additional translator help to keep a company for certain places.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you planning to come to Japan again?
I don't know. I think my mom wants me to go there to further my degree there, but that requires a very high CGPA of my education. I'm still thinking about it, but my mom really wants me to go there. She missed there for some reason. I don't know why.
There are many students from Malaysia, and they do actually excel quite a bit because, I mean, your English is fine. Basically, I mean, if you meet any Japanese local students, you might realize that their English is quite limited. So you have quite a bit of an advantage. Huh?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have for you, Ms.
Okay.
Nishikawa.
So once I download the link of the recording, I will send it out to you. Good luck with your report. I hope you don't get like C or something on this report.
No.
So just, I mean, you have all the authority to change here and there. So just make it all up and then change and improvise it and get an A report.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Nice talking to you both, Skylish,
Kalish.
Kalish, and Adam. All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ms. Nishikawa.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.